Hi, I'm Rue.
Hi, I'm Janelle. Welcome to episode 4 of Cocktails and Compliance. We are so excited to be here, as you can probably see from our setup here. Um, since we've last talked or recorded an episode, we've been through some holidays. And so at this point, we're going to say cheers to the new year. Oh,
Oh, the
such a good
happiest
noise.
sound on earth.
Yeah. So cheers to the new year.
Cheers to New Year's.
And also because it's almost Valentine's Day, Rue spent some time this morning making chocolate covered strawberries for us. So we kind of have a pink theme going on here. We've got bubbles and chocolate covered strawberries because, it's
Today we're going to be
delicious.
your compliance cupids.
Oh. Oh.
All right, so let's get this started here.
Absolutely. Cheers, Rue.
Cheers, Janelle.
You hear the clink? It's like a little baby clink.
It can't clink very
It
hard.
can't clink very hard, but yeah.
Do it again.
Cheers again.
Cheers.
Oh, it's my favorite.
Oh,
So
it's
good.
my favorite.
So good.
All right, so for today's cocktail, we are having
Yum. Some bubbles. So we have lots to cover today. We're ready to just jump in and get started. But I am going to say you are going to want to hang out with us the entire time because we have a very big announcement.
Ooh,
at
it's
the
going to be
end.
so much fun.
Good stuff. So excited. So we're going to dive right in. And what do we always talk about first, Rue?
Ooh, tracks 203A. We might as well have a drink because
Yeah,
we know it's
we
not
know
coming
it's-
anytime
yeah, it's not
soon.
coming, so. All right. Cheers. Cheers to that.
Cheers to that.
So the update is there's no update.
As is our typical update on
Yeah.
tracks 203A.
So I think in the last episode that we were starting to see some movement. We were starting to hear a little buzz. The HUD staff had said at NAMA, "Hey, we're ready." We're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" You forgot to tell everybody else. So we were thinking there was going to be a working group call in January, and we were going to start moving forward. We waited, didn't happen.
Now it's February.
Now it's February. So
Do we still have? We still don't have one on the calendar.
we still do not have one on the calendar. So what I have heard from my industry colleagues is we are at the point where all of the form changes have to go to OMB, the Office of Management and Budget.
For how many times is that? Like 9,000th time or something?
Something like that. I don't know. So the forms have to be approved and they go out. There is a comment period. There is a review period. That's a good 3 months right there, guys. Minimum. And then we'll look at finalizing a spec and moving forward. So if I were going to make predictions, I would say
2030.
possibly. Right?
I got you off guard.
You did
didn't I?
catch me a little. I had to think about it. I was like, maybe. If I had to make predictions, it won't come out to be implemented to the industry this year. Now, maybe at the tail end of the year, if some of all the magic puzzle pieces fall into place, could the software vendors get started on something? Yeah, maybe. But at this point, will it implement this year? Not a snowball's chance. My prediction.
Hey, I got a thought on that too. If anybody that's listening out there, if you hit our LinkedIn pages, if you are currently working on rad conversions, why don't you just ping us and let us know? We're just curious to see how many rad conversions are really going on out there. I'm not hearing of many, but just curious to see what's really happening out there because it's been a minute since we've all been face to face and been able to network. So
It has been, and I'm glad you brought that up, Rue, because really, that's really where I have a heart for all of those people that are doing rad conversions because
Yeah.
so much of this 203A update is to make some tweaks to the technical side of how all of that information gets transmitted to tracks and how things happen in your software. And so I know that they're dealing with workarounds and they're managing those
the first year
contracts.
vouchers are tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I haven't encountered a whole lot of that in conversation, and so I'm just kinda curious to see what's really happening out there in the space, you know, just to learn a little bit about what's really happening based on what we think is happening. So, hit us up on LinkedIn. if you are doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, moving on. So, speaking of being able to get back out and
Ooh,
go and see people, um, Rue and I just came back from a conference. We went to the CAR mid-year conference, right? They call this one their mid-year?
this is their mid-year,
This
yes.
is mid-year, yeah. So, CAR is the Council for Affordable and Rural Housing. They meet twice a year. January is always, I'm not going to lie, a fabulous location. And June is always in DC um, every year. So this year
Did not disappoint.
did not disappoint. Oh my. So, first of all, San Diego, one of our favorite cities. It's beautiful. But Rue and I talked about this. We've been to so many conferences, and for some reason, we have danced all around this location. But props to the car staff. It was at the Hotel del Coronado. Gorgeous venue. Wonderful.
Very old Hollywood elegance, glamour. It is fabulous. So if you've never been, you should go.
You should, even if it's vacation. Bonus if you get to land a work trip there. Um, the main conference area where we had a lot of our general sessions and where our trade show, um, which is basically just tables around the room. As Rue said earlier, go check out our LinkedIn pages. We posted pictures from this. Best trade show view ever. It's a round ballroom, windows all the way around, ocean views. So I'm not gonna lie, it didn't suck at all.
No, it did not.
No. It was fantastic. So, but beyond that wonderful view,
Yeah, what do we really talk about?
so some of us paid attention, some of us just looked at the water.
Some of us stayed at the booth.
True statement, Rue. We like to divide and conquer. I get to go take notes so I can come back and share some things with you. And Rue mans the booth and does a wonderful job of that and talking to people because they tend to come by at all times throughout the day to chat. So, having said that, there was some really great content, and I think one of the sessions that really stuck out the most to me was the news from Washington. So, what's going on in the political environment that impacts housing and impacts the CAR members? So, there was a lot of talk about what's going on the Hill. One of the speakers made a comment, that the House and the Senate are split, just like we see a lot throughout the rest of the country. And they were talking about the continuing resolution that was extended in December, and it is up in February on the 18th. And it may get extended again, but no one's really sure how it's going to go because there's just, I don't know, not a lot. I want to say there's a lot happening, but not a lot getting done is really my takeaway. That there's a lot of talk, but really the general consensus is that extending this continuing resolution is better than a government shutdown, which means we'll at least continue to get funded at our current rates. But one of the things that was brought up is this could cause issues for Section 8 contract renewals. HUD is actually moving to PDF and moving to mobile notaries to get signatures on these, but they're not all back in office yet. And actually, one of the things that's interesting too with trying to get things done with the House and the Senate is they're not always in their offices either. So there's still a lot of work from home. So it's interesting to hear that the government is going through the same things that we hear our industry staff is going through. The how do I manage this from a remote location?
I don't know, electronic signatures.
I don't know. How about that?
That's crazy.
Right? So it's interesting to hear that HUD is moving to that for contract renewals. But if you have a renewal coming up, make sure you're in contact with your PBCA. Make sure you're staying on top of that, and encourage them. They did allow electronic signatures for a lot of things, and it sounds like contract renewals is seeing more adoption of this. Because people are still working remotely. So the other thing that was a big topic of conversation was the Build Back Better program. So this spending bill was originally $3 trillion with a T. Trillion, right? And if you've been playing along at home and following along with the news, the House passed it, but at a 2.2 trillion with a T amount. But what the speaker was saying is that the Senate can't get together 60 votes to get it through. So, um, what does it mean for housing? It was really the question on everybody's mind at this conference. And, how do owners and agents get support for funding? So, one thing of note is that several retirements have been announced in both the House and the Senate, which means it's time to educate new members. So, people that have been champions of housing are now moving on. And so, it's making sure to have those conversations with your representatives in DC. And really, what I hear works best is those grassroots efforts. Talking to your representative, your senator, explaining to them what's going on in their district or their area of representation, how this impacts their constituents. That's really a good way to get their attention for sure.
Maybe they should just tell them to stop fighting amongst themselves and pay attention to the things that are really important, like housing.
Could be. They did say that Democrats are pushing forward funding provisions for housing, and so continue to thank the people that are moving housing forward, but really just to keep talking to both parties about housing. Like I said, they stress quite a bit. We need new champions on the hill for housing, and that really works best with owners and operators going to their representatives and talking about the impact.
And I know that that sounds like that's climbing a big mountain to be able to do that, but what I have learned is they do make themselves accessible. And most especially when they're back in their home offices rather than being in DC, make an effort to reach out to them and have conversations and convey your concerns and the things that it really does mean when these things don't take place.
Yeah, and Rue, that's an excellent point, and I think we've heard that at one other conference as well. With people working remotely and people being back in their districts quite a bit, and we talk about this with CARH and with NAMA. There is that time to go up on the hill and
Yes.
go meet with your Congress people and senators. But if you're not going to those conferences in person, you're not in DC, then try to catch them when they're in their local offices back in their district for sure.
Yep.
For sure. There was also some continuing conversation on emergency rental assistance plan, and I know we talked about this in our last episode.
ERAP.
ERAP. So we talked about this in a previous episode that there was a lot of talk about this program and distributing those funds out to states, and some states were better able to move forward with these programs and get the funds distributed to the right people. Other jurisdictions weren't as equipped to take on a new program and work through all of the pieces to execute this. And so there is still conversation about recapturing those funds from those districts that have not spent this money and redistributing those to districts that have been a little bit more effective.
I mean, that's kind of a hard argument not to have, right? If they're going to use the money for what it's out there for, then by all means, let them have some money.
Yeah. And it's not entirely fair for people in those areas where it wasn't efficient,
No, it's not.
but the money needs to be spent.
It does. It's sitting there doing nothing right now when it could be helping people who absolutely qualify for it and need it. So,
Yep, agreed. So they wrapped up this session with kind of if you had a crystal ball, what's your prediction of what's going to happen this year from a legislative perspective? And so one big question, and we've talked about this as we wait for a final rule on the average income test, with the IRS. It had been suggested, well, they need to hurry up because there's a new tax bill coming. So that was one of the questions from the audience: is will there be a new tax bill this year? And the response is work is being done towards it. But do you know what season we're in now? Election season. So that tends to impact how much work gets done because the focus tends to be on getting reelected.
Mhm.
So, all that to say, the prediction was we won't get a tax bill this year. So, on the bright side, maybe that means the IRS can stay focused on finishing the final rule for average income tests because they won't be distracted with this new tax bill. So, silver lining. And then there was also hey, what do you think is going to happen with the Build Back Better program? And what they predicted is it will move forward in pieces. So that ginormous spending amount that's in it will likely get chunked up and just pass it in little bits. So Stay tuned. I'll be very curious to see if those predictions come true.
Yeah, I will too. It's going to be a very interesting year on that.
Yeah. So the other thing that was really important at the car meeting was going to the management committee and listening to the owner agents and what's going on, what are their challenges that they have on staff, because we know, especially for us, that's where most of our customers fall. They're developers, but they're managing companies as well. So
Here, cheers to them
cheers
because
to them. Oh
oh
boy,
man, has it
this
been hard for
is
them these last
it
couple of
has
years.
been rough
We celebrate you guys for sure.
for sure. So there wasn't as much talk about evictions, which was interesting because we've talked about eviction
Mm-hmm.
moratorium for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
But there was talk about tenant rent payments. And they're still seeing instances where tenants think that it's been rent forgiveness, not just a delaying of paying those rent payments. And so they're either seeing tenants that haven't paid rent or have short paid their rent for the last 1 to 1.5 years. So they are bracing for higher legal fees for evictions when that day comes. And we've talked about this in the past too. With that also comes higher maintenance fees to turn those units, and then you've got the leasing costs and
Well, in reality, it's almost like the people that haven't paid their rent at this point or made any effort to reach out to the office staff and work through it. Um, those units could be in really bad shape at this point.
could be. Could be. So again, thinking about higher maintenance cost. Because we're at the beginning of the year, one of the things that we heard quite a bit about, and I've actually seen some follow up from the CAR staff post conference, is the approval of the 22 budgets. And one member spoke up and said he had 65 properties and 37 of those budgets have not been approved yet.
When are they due to be approved?
I believe it was at the beginning of this year.
Oh, they're a little behind.
They're a little behind. And so, what does that mean in reality? Because, okay, a budget's approved, whatever, but that's tied to rent increases. And so they're saying at the rate they're going, rent increases that they would have liked to have put into place in January may not happen now till April at the earliest. So again, you've got these properties that need to collect those rent payments. They use it for their
Desperately need cash flow.
absolutely. They need it for their mortgages. They need
Yeah.
it for salaries. They need it for maintenance costs and things like that. So, um, I know they desperately want to see those rent increases come through, but I hate to see that delay for them. So, there was the ongoing conversation about supply chain issues and how that impacts developments, new construction, but also just maintaining, like you said, how are these units now, right? And if you've got to go back and if you're rehabbing units or you've got to replace appliances or things like
How do you
that, I
get
mean,
them?
yeah. So still some delays there.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. Pretty unfortunate.
It is for sure. Um, the other thing that we heard too was just the ongoing discussion about staffing shortages.
What are they doing though? Because, this has been an ongoing conversation. And how is our industry getting out there and encouraging younger people to step in and come in?
I think it's tough. Now, in some cases, property management in particular, we do see some of this being generational,
Uh-huh.
right? So you're bringing in family members,
Right?
you're thinking about succession planning and so that's certainly a wonderful way to do this. I know that there are some universities that have property management programs. I know there's one in Virginia. I can't think of it off the top of my head. I want to say it's in Richmond, but
At Virginia Tech, maybe?
maybe I can't remember. But I know that universities are doing property management programs, so certainly trying to recruit from there. But one of the things that they said, and I don't know that you and I have run across this before, but they said part of the labor shortage is older workers who are just saying, you know what, I'm just going to retire and I'm not going to come back into the workforce. And that was actually where a lot of their maintenance staff was
Mm-hmm.
coming from. So, that's unfortunate to see that because that's a lot of experience that's walking out the door. And then they said their issue with younger workers then is if they're paying $14, $15 an hour, they said, they don't want to work at that rate. They are expecting a higher rate. So And it's not just this industry; it's a challenge that we see across the board. I mean, how many times have you driven down the street and you know there's a sign on the fast food place, $500 signing bonus. I mean, I don't think I've
Job
ever seen
fairs.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Job fairs I think are great as well, but it's networking and I see lots of posts all the time on LinkedIn too, right? Who do you know, who's excited and has a passion for this? There's lots of people hiring. So I think anytime people can refer people, to openings through their network, I know that we'll repost a lot of times when we see people that are looking for employees.
I think colleges should offer an educational course in affordable housing as well. The thought, I don't run a college, but if any of you guys out there run a college, there's an idea.
I was just say, Rue, maybe there's our next level thing.
There we
We'll
go.
just start an affordable housing college. No big deal. Truly, it's easy. Um,
But we do know people who are really smart that could help.
we do, yeah. Um, the other thing that was brought up, and it was, I hate to kind of leave this one on a down note, but they said with shortage in staffing, the increased wages, someone made a comment that there's properties that have been financially stable for years, and they
Hmm.
said this could be a huge turning point for those properties and really kind of just a breaking point. They're really concerned about budget impacts and getting those rent increases and looking at those increases in expenses, and it's really sad to see that
I don't know how they can
it's
pay higher workers' wages when they can't even collect their rents.
yeah, yeah. So it's going to be tough. So again, our hearts really go out to you. We know that it's a challenge. And we've been hearing this for the last, I don't know, several months as we've attended conferences and listening to member calls and things like that. And it's tough. And, anything we could do to help, if we can refer candidates over to you from our network or repost your job openings, we're happy to do that. But um it's tough right now for sure.
It is tough right now. I'd love to have a conversation with anybody out there that would be willing to talk about how you think that you could reduce your expenses and be more efficient with what you've got.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking of reducing expenses, moving into our next topic, I really wanted to spend some time talking again about electronic signatures, electronic documents, electronic storage of those documents. Um, this industry spends a lot of money on paper,
Oh, yeah, they do.
a lot of money on
Yeah,
paper,
they do.
a lot of money on storage of files, things like that. So, we've talked, I think, in every episode about electronic signatures and about what a wonderful thing this is that this industry can take advantage of. But we continue to see really low adoption of this, which is somewhat surprising to me. But in conversations in the industry and talking with some of our colleagues, there tends to be a lot of paralysis analysis. The where do I start?
Well, and part of that is too, some of it is expensive. Some of it is not really cost effective. I happen to know a really cost effective solution. If
Oh, shame!
anybody
There's the shameless plug. Cheers.
if anybody has any interest in learning anything about it, please reach out to me.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm very opportunistic.
and that's okay. We love you for it. Um, so I think the thing to remember, and my advice to any of you that haven't gotten started on this, it's not all or nothing. Um, Really, one of the key things to start with is just get your applicant or your resident's permission, right? You have to get their permission to allow electronic documents. So there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can add a question to your application. Hey, are you okay receiving electronic documents? You can add it to an annual recertification checklist for your residents. Are you okay getting electronic documents? There's also, I've seen people do a one time form during that interview where you sit down with someone, whether it's move in or it's annual recertification, you sit down with them and give them a form. Um, I know that there are people in the industry that have created forms and sell form packages. You might want to talk with your attorneys on, making sure you've checked all the boxes, that you've covered everything, but give them a form, get that permission. That's really your first step, right?
I don't disagree with that, but I'll take it to a different place too because I'm not sure that the whole industry really understands what is truly an electronic document or electronic signature.
Um,
So it is education as well.
it is education. I know that the AMAs do a good job of talking about this at their conferences. I know, Rue and I have attended SAMA. I've spoken at it there. I'm speaking at it at a conference again in a couple of months, SAMA, Kentucky. Uh,
That was one of our big announcements at the end. Just let the
it's one of, but it's
cat
not
out of the bag.
the big
I
announcement. It's not the
know.
big one. So still stay tuned. There's more coming. Um, but your regional associations, whether it's CAR, whether it's your AMAs, whether it's NAMA, and look at trainers in the space. They are doing sessions on electronic signature and offering suggestions on how to get started too. So take advantage of that. We've talked about this before. Read the notice. Follow up
Right.
with your software vendor if you're not really sure what they handle. I can tell you the major software vendors all do this and are compliant. So if you have concerns about whether or not it's legally acceptable, we've checked those technical boxes for you. So
We've all worked with HUD to be sure that we are okay.
we have all done that, and we've talked about this before. We've been doing it for a long time.
Long time.
On the conventional side, military, student, they all use it as well. But again, think about starting small. First and foremost, get that permission from your resident or applicants to accept electronic documents. And here's the thing, you don't have to make all of your documents electronically available. Start with the required forms. Start with your VAWA documents, your 9887 packages for consent, your residence rights and responsibilities, your how is rent determined. On the AR side, start with your 120, your 90-day notices. And it can be as simple as sending them links to your forms, putting the forms on your applicant and resident portals, your websites, if you have that for your properties, which, by the way, I highly recommend that you have if you don't.
Right.
It's a great way to get traffic as people look for housing in their area. It's a great way to get some leads. And I know a lot of you, and especially in the bigger markets, have really long wait lists, and getting leads isn't really your issue. But if you think about even rural properties, and trying to attract people and, making people aware that there is housing available in that area.
Well, and that also too, thinking back to what you were talking about the consent, if you're using an online application, there is a place in your online application process that your applicant gives that consent.
Mhm.
So, probably if you're using an online application, you've already gotten their consent. So, you might follow up on that. And then the other thing is be sure you're collecting all the emails because today I would wager that almost every household has an email. They've all got smartphones. They've got some kind of Gmail and Outlook, something.
Yeah, that's a great point, Rue, because we see that sometimes where people aren't gathering that email address. Get it on your from your prospects, get it on your guest cards,
Make
collect
it
it on a
required.
yeah, absolutely. Make it a required field. Again, your website, if you're bringing in traffic that way and you're having them fill out a form, make it a required field. Make sure you're asking your residents during your annual recertification process. You haven't collected it, add that to your checklist. Do we have a current email address for you? Because in addition to putting links on your website and saying, I'm not going to print out the paper form, but here's the link right here on my website that you can go and download these. There are other forms that while you have to give them out in paper, how many people are going to pay attention to a piece of paper that you've posted on a bulletin board or you've shoved it under their door or whatever the case may be? Even if you're required to have a paper document, you can always follow up with an email. So,
Mhm.
things like changes to the lease, changes to utility allowances, that 60-day notice for annual recertifications, follow it up with an email. And if you think about how many times you're printing out all of those paper documents for your applicants, for your current residents, think about those paper costs. So, back to budgets and how am I going to keep my property solid from a financial perspective? It adds up, guys. I mean, it's a simple way to cut costs. but it adds up. So,
Well, and here's the other thing, it's not only the paper costs, but it's efficiencies, because if all of your forms are in electronic format, guess what? You don't have to download them and print them and send them somewhere to the corporate office for review or whatever it is, right? You've always got access to those electronic documents.
mhm.
And so and that's efficiency, because how many hours does somebody spend doing that? If you're a large company, a lot of hours are spent there. If you're managing a large property, a lot of hours are spent on that. So
Yeah.
there's so many efficiencies that this functionality can bring you.
Yeah. Um,
And I'll be happy to show you how ResMan works. Just let me
oh my
know.
lord. All right, take a sip for your shameless plug. So the other thing with electronic signatures that we still hear is, well, I have a senior property. My seniors aren't going to do this. But you know what, guys? Stop and think about it. And I don't want to give anything away about my age or Rue's, but senior properties are 62 and older. How many people do you know that are 62?
Well, even what about your mom and dad? Do you send them stuff on email? Seriously, they have adopted this technology, whether you even know it or whether you think about it, they have adopted this technology.
To Rue's point, my parents are in their 70s. They have iPhones, they have Macs, they text us all the time. Um, and now yeah, they're tech savvy. Yeah,
They're tech
they're
savvy.
they're tech savvy, and they're probably more tech savvy than you think. So think about that. Now, if you think about older residents, someone in their 80s or their 90 or whatever, are they filling out those forms? Probably not. It's probably their kids who, guess what, are tech savvy, right?
Or you have a tablet in the office or a computer in the office where they can come into the office and fill out those electronic forms.
Absolutely, set up a kiosk. But if you think about those residents that maybe their children don't live in the area, they're remote, they want electronic forms and
Yes,
they
they do.
want that electronic paperless process.
Hmm.
And you know what? Here's another bonus too for your site staff. That's way more legible than people writing some of these
Oh,
forms.
yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, I can tell you from some time that I've done some compliance file reviews and you're trying to think about income calculations and things like that. I can't read the form sometimes.
Right.
So I take an electronic form any day.
I can't read the forms I fill out sometimes.
I can't help you with that. All right. So again, our biggest takeaways here today are talk to your representatives, be an advocate for housing, ask them to continue to be a champion or educate them on the need for housing. Work with your contract administrators, Section 8 guys on your contract renewals. Um,
Well, and really and truly, I really can't stress this enough. And I know I talk about it all the time when we're on this, but there are so many things that your NAMAs and your AMAs and your CARs do on behalf of owners and agents. And they do that grassroots level of effort, and they start things, and they'll even send you letters that all you have to do is download it, put your name to it, and send it out. So there are so many things to do. If you're lost about where to go, consider even doing something like that. It
yeah.
it is very valuable and beneficial for owners and agents to be a part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if you haven't gotten on the electronic signatures, electronic documents, electronic storage bandwagon, I'm going to strongly encourage you. It is a way to save some money. Uh, Stop buying so much paper, stop storing files, start somewhere. You don't necessarily have to go back and, upload all of your, scan all your documents and file them. Some people are doing that, right? And some people will hire interns or whatever the case may be, and they just kind of chip away at it. Um, but start now. Start with your AR, start with your move ins, whatever the case may be. Start with the permission from your applicants and residents. Start with the links on your website. If you're unsure, reach out to us on LinkedIn. We're happy to talk through that process too. Or you can see us on the road. Rue and I are going on the road again. We're so excited that things have opened up and there are more conferences that we are going to. So,
Where are we going to be, Janelle?
well, it's funny you asked.
I get to be at the next one. You don't.
Rue gets, all right, sadness. So, in March is the NAMA meeting in DC. As Rue said, she will be there. I'll be there in spirit. Let's be honest. It's spring break for my kid. I'm going to be in Cabo. But anyway, I'll be there in spirit and we'll still give you updates afterwards. Rue gets to take notes this time. Yay, Rue.
Oh boy, that's a lot on me because I am not the greatest note taker.
No pressure, and I have every confidence in you. But in April, we're going to be on the road a couple times in April too. Rue said I'll let the cat out of the bag. We are going to the Sama Kentucky conference early in April. I'm going to be moderating a panel on my favorite topic, electronic signatures. Yay, I'm excited about that. But then we're also going to be headed up to the Pacific Northwest. We are going to the AMA Washington conference as well. It's in Spokane, Washington. And we're excited. We've got some customers that are in the Pacific Northwest. We're excited to go and see them. And then in May, we're just going to keep the suitcase packed, right?
So
Keeping the suitcase packed. Well, before she gets too excited, in May, we will be at AMA PSW, which is in Southern California. So excited about that one. That one is in LA. And Rue is, if you guys are not watching this on video, Rue's like bouncing in her seat. And I don't know if you can hear her clapping. But we did say that we had a big announcement for you at the beginning. And
I wish I had a drum roll.
ResMania. We are ridiculously excited. So it is our ResMan user conference.
Get ready to rumble.
We have been talking about this. We had it scheduled in 2020. We all know what happened there. We thought about it again for a hot minute last year and, well, variants. And so now we're like, third time's a charm. It's happening. It is May 9th through 11th. It is in Plano, Texas. It is at the beautiful Renaissance Hotel that is in Legacy West. Rue and I like to frequent that area. It's got some fantastic restaurants. So we're excited. We have been working on the agenda. That'll be finalized, I want to say this week. Registration is open. We have already had a phenomenal response to this. I am so excited. But one of the things that I am the most excited about, and again, if you're not watching the video, you should see our faces. We're like grinning ear to ear. There is an entire track of sessions that is affordable. So we have got an amazing lineup for you guys. And I think the thing I'm most excited about is the last session that day will be a live recording of Cocktails and Compliance from ResMania.
With our studio audience. And can I say it?
Yes, we have special guests. Absolutely.
We have two of the most amazing people in the affordable housing space. So Jenny Da Silva with Da Silva Housing Group and Stacy Day with Karen Graham Consulting. So that's a HUD expert and that is a tax credit expert. They are going to be guesting with us live on Cocktails and Compliance. So we are so excited. If you don't know about them, go look them up on LinkedIn. Please, if you're interested in joining us, shoot Janelle or I questions that you might like to have us address during that session, because we're going to have some really, really expert people in the field. So we're super, super excited.
You know what else we're going to have during that?
Oh my goodness, we're going to have cocktails.
Heck yeah, we are.
Heck yeah.
So I'm sure we'll come up with some sort of signature user conference cocktail that we'll have to celebrate our special guest. But I'm so excited. I'm so excited to do this with a live audience, take questions from the audience if you guys submit stuff. But we would love to see you there. So excited about our special guests. Rue and I have known Jenny and Stacy for a really long time. I think that we've all been in the industry probably the same amount of time. Whew.
And I'm not going to lie, I am pretty honored that they accepted our invitations to speak for us. So we are super excited to take the stage with those two ladies. All right. Speaking of getting ready to rumble with us at ResMania,
here's where you can register. Go to resmania.myresman.com and sign up, and we will see you there. As always, check out PropTalk, powered by ResMan, for cocktails and compliance updates. We have other podcasts as well. Watch our myresman.com website. We put blog content out. In fact, we put something out recently about electronic signatures and about that adoption. Things to look forward to this year, things you should be considering. So watch for that content as well. As always, Rue and I will share content on LinkedIn. We'll share on Facebook. If you haven't connected with us, please do so.
And I'll just go ahead and warn you, if you look at my profile and we're not connected, I'm going to send you a connection request because why don't we connect?
She does. She figures if you're going to take the time to look, she's like, "Oh, we're connecting.
Oh, we're
It's
connecting.
on. It's on." So, everybody, again, we appreciate all that you do in the industry. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Happy New Year and happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Bye, guys.